welcome to the Wild at Heart Sew Along. I'm so excited that you are joining me on this 4-week adventure where we are going to take this block and turn it into a beautiful bouquet of hearts just in time for your quilt top to be ready for Valentine's Day. This week is all about prepping our fabric and cutting it so that next week we can get right into diving into sewing curves, which are not scary. We're gonna prove to you that they're not scary. You can do them. I'm confident that you can. So the first thing that you're gonna need is a copy of the pattern, which is available in my Etsy shop. If you haven't gone to grab it, I will link it here for you so that you can grab your copy and get started. The next thing you're gonna need is to do your fabric pull, which includes a light background, kind of like a medium dark background, a dark background, and then assorted colors, which are fat quarter friendly for your hearts. Each fat quarter will create 2 hearts. So you'll get 2 of each color. And on the pattern, it will tell you how many you need depending on which size you're choosing to make. I am on a mission to use my stash this year. So I am choosing to pull fabrics that come from my stash so that I can use up what I have rather than having to go buy new. So my pull, this is the light, this is kind of the medium, and then this is the dark. And for my hearts, you'll see that I have this range of, I have some yardage, I have some fat quarters. This is, these are all kind of more of my pinky shades. And then I also have grabbed some purple shades, which, range also light to dark so that I can mix it up once I get my quilt put together. So together, all of that looks like this. So it's just kind of gonna be like a pinky purple bouquet of hearts with this background that's gonna create a really cool plaid woven basket vibe in the quilt. So before we actually start cutting, I want to talk a little bit about fabric prep when you are dealing with curves. Typically, when we are making a quilt that is using mainly rectangular or square components, I don't personally use a lot of starch. I don't use starch at all, really. And that's because each fabric has grain and cross grain, meaning that when these fibers are woven together, they're weaving, and some are going up and down and some are going left to right, and they're weaving together, and that is what is actually physically creating your textile. When we are making quilts that use square and rectangular components, we are cutting on the grain line. So when we cut this woven textile, we're cutting right along those lines, and they're staying pretty structured. When we start to introduce a curve, what happens is instead of cutting, straight on that line, you're starting to cut across them at an angle. And what they're going to want to do is they're going to want to distort funny and stretch and move. And then you're left with this wonky mess, and you think it's something that you did, and it's really not. It's just the way that the fabric is going to behave because you're cutting it at an angle that isn't parallel or perpendicular to the grain of the fabric. What we can do to help that is use starch. And I like to use Mary Ellen's Best Press. You can use whatever you want. I personally, say, sorry, quilt police, I don't pre-wash my fabric. I just don't have time for that, personally. I've never done it. My mom has never done it. I have aunts that do, and they prefer to do that, which is totally cool, totally up to them. I don't, so I'm not going to even wash it with starch because some people choose to do that. I use the spray, and this is just what I find works well for me. And so what I do is I saturate the fabric pretty well, and then I never use steam. I don't use steam on anything when I'm dealing with curved piecing. I am gonna saturate this, and then I'm gonna use a really hot iron, and I'm just gonna use the heat of the iron to almost bake the starch into the fabric. And what that does is it makes our fabric like a really fancy updo for a wedding, where you lather your hair with the most hairspray possible so that it still looks put together at the end of the evening. That's essentially what we're doing to our fabric, is we're using hairspray to make sure that it stays in place, that the weaving that is there isn't going to start to distort as you cut along that curve. It's going to hold it nice and tight, so that when you sew, it's not going to start doing some wonky things. Do note that there is still movement that can happen. It's not going to be 100% perfect. So you still have to be really careful when you're handling the curved components. And we'll get into that next week as we talk about actually piecing these curved components. But for now, make sure that you have your fabric pulled in the quantities that are written in the pattern. You've got some sort of starch that you can prep all of your fabric, saturate it, get it hot with steam, get it hot with your iron, not with steam. And then I'll meet you at the cutting mat.
I'm going to keep cutting the rest of my fat quarters and stash yardage. We're going to make sure that we have enough for the size of the quilt that we are making. And we'll add that to all of our background fabrics. And we will meet back here next week where we will begin working with curves. I'll see you next time. As always, be wild, sew something pretty.